fantastic.
Okay, well, I'll start if that's okay. Hi, everybody. It's really great to see you via Zoom here today. We're Katie and I and the staff at the Choctaw Cultural Center are very honored to be chosen and to be a part of this project. And we're also honored to have the opportunity to share with you today some of the work and the things that have gone into developing the Choctaw Cultural Center. So we have a virtual tour coming up, but first we wanted to start with introducing ourselves and then going into a brief program that just gives a little bit of the background and some of the goals when the project first started. And then I think the virtual tour will really bring everything full circle. You'll see a lot of images from where we are with the project today. So with that, I'll let Katie go ahead and introduce herself. She's been integral to coming on board as our director of curation and really helping to get all the collections organized. And she's just taking on quite a bit. So couldn't do it without Katie. So Katie, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Stacey. Hello, my name is Katie Shaw, and I am the Director of Curation for the Choctaw Cultural Center. I came to them from working for Cherokee Nation for 12 years, developing their museum program, and just thrilled to be with this beautiful new facility. And I'm thrilled to show everyone today what we've been working so hard on for so many years. This has been a project that there's a lot of love and passion in, and I think you'll be able to tell. Choctaw Nation hasn't had a dedicated collection space to preserve artifacts before, so this is brand new territory for the tribe, and we're very excited to be able to provide that.
Thank you. I also wanted you all to have an opportunity to meet our marketing manager, Crystal Bully. Crystal, are you on the line or on the video? I saw her a moment ago, so I think
she's here. I don't think we can hear her though.
Oh, okay. We'll wait. Okay. Okay, well, that's all right. I just wanted you all to meet Crystal. You know, any kind of project like this, the staff you bring on board is so important. And so we've been really, really lucky to have a great team that's coming together. We'll talk a little bit more about where this resides, where the Cultural Center team resides overall within the Cultural Services Division at Choctaw Nation. But the Cultural Center team itself, we are new, so me coming on board to help lead the project, Katie, I think, came right after me, and we've continued to build a team that includes a director of education, marketing manager, facilities manager, education coordinator, retail manager, a chef de cuisine, all the things that are going to go into the Cultural Center. So I'm sorry you didn't have a chance to meet Crystal. And Crystal, at any point, if you are able to introduce yourself, that's totally fine. She's had many years of experience at Choctaw Nation, and she's been so helpful to getting our marketing plan finalized. You know, all of the details that begin to need to happen as you prepare to open, marketing plans, branding style guide, everything that goes into it. So we appreciate Crystal. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and share a PowerPoint that we wanted to walk through. Actually, I wonder if I can share this. Okay, is everybody seeing that? Yay. Small wins. Some of the technology, it's like I can barely chew gum and walk at the same time. So this will test me today, but this is good. So just want to share a little bit of background about our project before we go into the virtual tour today. And again, we are so appreciative of the Association of Tribal Archives, Libraries, and Museums. And this project, Culture Builds Communities, you know, an opportunity to share what has been poured into the Cultural Center with other cultural organizations, tribal nations who are working to develop their own cultural center. This is just a wonderful opportunity, and we're so honored to be a part of it. Just a little background, you know, to be sure to attribute the number of years, the hearts that have been the community members that have really made this possible. This has been truly born of community and of work of the Choctaw Nation. The Cultural Center and the images that you'll see today, and when we share the virtual tour, what you're going to see really is a lot of heart and souls and time that was taken to share what the hopes and dreams were for this cultural center. And so those of us who have come on board to help get the cultural center open and develop programming and organize collections, we've been very blessed to step into a project that was so strong to begin with. So we are very, very thankful of that. Let's see, I'm trying to figure out how to make my slides go forward. There we go. So the Choctaw Cultural Center will be a place to experience the Choctaw story. And this is a couple of images. These are current images of the facility itself, which is over 100,000 square feet. And it sits on a footprint, a project footprint of a little over 20 acres, but that is kind of nestled, if you will, in the middle of 100 acres belonging to Choctaw Nation. And it's in this beautiful prairie land that was essentially untouched prairie land. So the site itself is truly, there's a long drive coming in, and it really is kind of like disconnecting with the normal hustle and bustle of the world and pulling out to the prairie and seeing the cultural center. So it's really lovely. It's a goal to be able to experience that Choctaw story firsthand. And when visitors and guests visit the Cultural Center, we really want them to have an opportunity to truly immerse themselves in the Choctaw story. And this will come clear as we talk about how the exhibits were designed as well. But the entire experience was meant to be very immersive, immersing in the natural environment, immersing into Choctaw history and culture. This is one of the billboards that just went up. We're very excited about it. The stickball sticks kind of come off the billboard, which is really fun and lively. And if you've ever seen a stickball game, and even if you haven't, I think you can get a feel for the passion of the sport and of this very important sport to Choctaw people. So the billboards are just now rolling out. A lot of eyes were on these designs to make sure they were approved by a cultural team. But it's important to remember, you know, our audience for the Cultural Center, Choctaw Nation talks about the Choctaw Proud. And the Choctaw Proud are tribal members, of course, but it's also those that are really closely connected to the Choctaw community or supportive of the Choctaw community. So these are people who know the Choctaw story. They're proud of what the nation has built, and they want that story to live on. So we're all looking for a way through this cultural center to future-proof the nation's legacy, and make sure it's on a trajectory to be there and influence generations to come. So I'll give a little bit of an introduction. Again, you're going to see during the virtual tour a little bit more than this, but it shares some of the early design concepts that we went through. The exhibits were designed to be very immersive and to be experiential rather than text focused. And I've worked on a couple of different projects, and you all have probably experienced or will experience kind of the battle for text. You know, when you're working on an exhibit and you want more words to explain everything, and the designers are like, no, that's too many words. You've got to pull your words back. And it really can be a challenge. And so I think this exhibit experience, when you all come and visit, which we hope you will, I think you'll be really surprised. It's very little text. It's much more about what you see and feel as you move into the exhibits. There are 4 different types of landscapes along the path of the Choctaw Noat Aya, and that means the Choctaw Journey. That's the name of our permanent exhibitions. The Choctaw Journey is on the main entrance gates when you first come in. And then I'll let Katie share a little bit about the Choctaw artists who've been involved in making cultural objects and regalia for the landscape. So Katie, share whatever you would like.
Great, thank you. We have a series of mannequins which are called life casts. I'm sure you guys are familiar with those, cast from actual Choctaw citizens, and you'll get to see some about that in the video. But those mannequins are wearing clothes that were made by Choctaws. And some of these things, like the twining of skirts or the making of a dog bane belt, haven't been done by Choctaws in over 200 years. So these are practices that we brought back for these exhibits so that they could be as accurate as possible. There are, beautiful pieces of pottery representing the old styles. There's woven mats and baskets, clothing. There's really a lot of personal touches to these exhibits.
Yeah, thank you. And just as a little bit more background, these exhibits were based on input that was received through over 2,000 surveys that went out to community and to, there are 12 different districts of the Choctaw Nation that cover approximately 10.5 acres in southeastern Oklahoma. So really a strong concerted effort to reach out to community to get surveys about what should be in not only the exhibits, but what kind of programming can be facilitated at the Cultural Center. There were also over 100 interviews done with tribal citizens, as well as input directly from tribal leadership, of course. And then in addition to that, Choctaw professionals have also been heavily involved in many steps of the exhibit creation, from design to research to Choctaw people shooting videos, photographs, and even technical aspects of the exhibit content. So really proud of that community involvement in the exhibitions. Cultural Center is really a living cultural center. We're excited about that. We're very excited. One of the things we talk about a lot is that this cultural center will only be as successful as it is of value to the community. And, Karen, I don't know if you remember when we worked on our project many years ago, that survey instrument that you had developed and that we were working to share to a broader audience, it asks some really fantastic questions about the goals of your cultural center, you know, for those who were developing one. And those questions have always stuck in my mind. And I think the Choctaw Cultural Center and how it's being developed with this focus on community is really strong, and it will serve the needs of the community. And so we talk about the 12 districts of the Choctaw Nation and ways to engage the 12 districts. We have a Choctaw royalty program. We're excited to partner with the apprentices, could have opportunities to, you know, be almost our diplomats at the Choctaw Cultural Center to come in and assist and also get training. We have guest demonstrators and performers, tribal citizens who can come in and help teach. Right now, there's already Choctaw Heritage Day taking place each month, and this encourages involvement from all the tribal members and employees. So we're so excited to connect to Heritage Days and to continue to celebrate Choctaw history and culture. That's normally at the tribal headquarters, and then we'll be able to continue to support that at the Cultural Center and find connections there. Also, the Choctaw Community Centers that I mentioned, we're excited to reach out through outreach programs. Some already exist through the Cultural Services Division, which I mentioned. And then we'll be able to start new programs. Katie and I have been talking about an opportunity to highlight districts in our changing exhibition gallery. And really working with community from each district to, you know, put different spotlights on their background or members of that community. And then traveling exhibits, of course, are another exciting opportunity within the nation and through partnerships with other museums. So focus on community continues. The Choctaw Nation has a Choctaw Artist Registry that currently has a little over 600 Choctaw citizens who are registered as part of that registry. And so we're working together to talk about opportunities to host workshops, to reach out and share opportunities that will be there at the new Cultural Center with those artists. Just a lot of opportunity. We're expanding the artist registry to create a youth artist registry, to have an artist in residence program. We're working to get that developed, and we have a grant through the NEA to focus on that. So that's very exciting. And then I'll let Katie tell you a little about our changing exhibition gallery and what we're working on right now for the opening and kind of what we hope will be in that space in the future.
Yeah, our changing exhibition gallery, we want it to very much be a partner piece to our permanent exhibits, but it is a temporary exhibit. So looking at a topic that, you're trying to find a topic that relates to all these really immersive experiences was a little difficult at first, but we came up with a really good idea, and we've hired a company that's working on it now, but we're going to highlight Choctaw storytelling in the beginning. And we will look at different stories, why the story is told, how they're told, who tells them, why they're still told. And then we're also going to have little immersive vignettes into several stories. There's a story of megafauna, the woolly mammoth. There's a story about Rabbit, who's a trickster in our culture. There's a story about the Great Flood with the sapsucker. So there's a lot of really great things that people can come in and relate to and take those stories with them, so that that exhibit and the Cultural Center lives on in someone else's storytelling. The changing exhibit, it could be as temporary as long-term as we want to make it. At this point, we're going to have the storytelling exhibit for a little while, but there's also going to be areas where the communities can come in and tell their stories. If someone wants to come in and demonstrate, or if there is some kind of event we want to have in there as well, that space is optional for that.
Thank you. Yeah, very exciting. So, you know, an important part of the Cultural Center is this opportunity for engagement. You know, this is the fun stuff, the exciting stuff, classes, demonstrations. We have approximately 7 classrooms in the Cultural Center. I think every one of the classrooms has a smart board, so that we can really bring some programming to life, continue to perpetuate Choctaw culture, teaching not only staff of the Cultural Center or, for example, historic preservation, they have a pottery class, but also an opportunity to bring community in and share their expertise if they're interested at the Cultural Center. So one of the classrooms was designed specifically to be a cooking classroom, and it has full kitchen in it and a refrigerator. And so everyone's really excited. They'll see all the different classrooms and then they're like, a cooking classroom. So we're really excited about that. And we just brought on our chef de cuisine that will lead the Chompali is the name of the restaurant at the Choctaw Cultural Center. And that means like delicious. And so we're excited. We already showed her the cooking classroom, and we just have a lot of ideas for these spaces. So we're having a lot of fun. The other thing that's on the site that I don't know if there'll be a lot of images of it today. Maybe there will be, I can't remember. There's a stickball field. So we have a formal stickball field kind of just across from the Cultural Center. And then we also have a practice field that's next to the mound in the Living Village in the back of the Cultural Center. So lots of opportunity for community to come in for tournaments and all of the action that's around the stickball game. So we're really excited about that. There's also Living Village. You'll see some images of that today in the virtual tour. The traditional houses are not up yet. That's going to be part of a process and probably part of an educational process. But there is a mound, an earthwork in the Living Village that's really beautiful and pays homage to the Mother Mound for Choctaw Nation. There's a small dance circle. There's a garden. So this is a space just for activity, demonstrations, and even more learning and gathering. And then lastly, of course, a gift store called Hushy, a learning lounge that's part of the restaurant called Chompali. So you'll see a little more of that. And this is the backside. As you're leaving the Choctaw Cultural Center, Chapisa Lachiki, which means we will see you again soon. So we wanted to just end the PowerPoint with some slides of the actual gate. So with that, I'm going to stop this share and we can answer any questions before we go into the virtual tour, which is video. Okay, did that work?
Yeah.
All right, so I know we're just diving into it and you haven't seen the virtual tour, but does anybody have any questions or comments yet? Nothing yet?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, no, this is Jessica. I'm in Alaska, and we don't have a cultural facility yet, but we're excited to be working toward one. We actually have right now a survey out, and we were excited about getting like 30 responses initially. We've resent it out. So when we heard 2,000, or when I heard 2,000, like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So I guess because we're really at the beginning and we are not looking at 100,000 square foot facility, but what's the time frame that it took to get from, you know, the early visioning to even this stage now, which, as you explained, is still like in the building, growing, developing part?
Yeah, in the video, the chief of the Choctaw Nation talks about that this took about 8 years. So I think from the earliest inception, kind of the first idea, then going out and doing a lot of listening to community. Another thing that the cultural team who kind of helped lead the way on this project did was go out and visit a lot of other cultural centers just to see what else had been built, what else was happening out there, what were those lessons learned. So they, you know, there was some time spent just really organically kind of growing everything, getting all the information together. And then it was in 2017 that the Tribal Council officially gave it the green light with funding attached to begin to develop all the designs, begin construction, all of that. So the construction part goes fast, you know, it's all of the design time and community input time and just making sure it feels really right for your community. And don't let those numbers intimidate. You know, Choctaw Nation is a really large nation with over 200,000 tribal citizens. So those numbers are going to look a little higher, but I wouldn't let that intimidate you at all. It's really great. You are reaching out. And I think smaller tribes or villages, you know, 30 different people giving you feedback, that probably is good.
That's probably a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to.
Yeah, well, thank you. And the 200,000 tribal citizens puts it in reference a lot better. Thanks.
If I could jump in here, I'm curious. I'm representing both my tribe and the Nisqually tribe on these questions for our centers. I think the big question, we put out a survey as well, and kind of the key question that we're asking our tribal citizens is, you know, how much of this cultural center is about sharing the culture with tourists or outsiders versus how much of it is really focused on the tribal membership and their use of it. And right now it's leaning much more in both cases towards, you know, the tribal membership itself, utilizing the place as a center of their, you know, of activity and learning. And then, you know, visitors are kind of more a secondary consideration. Would you clarify? It sounds, from what I'm hearing so far, it's a little bit reversed here in the sense that it sounds like it's very much strongly about demonstrations and presentation to the outside world. Is that the intent of the center? I mean, am I getting that correct in terms of sort of your overall focus of the cultural center?
I'll start, and Katie, you feel free to add to this if you want. That's a great question. I feel like that is one of the key kind of issues with, I've been a part of several different projects from like my tribe, when our tribe opened our first kind of really little museum, to another bigger project in Oklahoma City, a much larger project. And that's always a really great question that you have to ask yourself is, who is your primary audience? Who are you there to serve? And it doesn't mean that they have to be exclusive. So I think Choctaw Nation, it probably isn't fully reversed. I think that everyone is very aware that this is another service, another offering that Choctaw Nation is offering its citizens, this place to visit, this place to learn more, a place for the community to come in, a place for the community to play stickball, a place to have classrooms and perpetuate that traditional knowledge. So this is very much for Choctaw people and citizens. And at the same time, we can open those doors to the public, and we welcome, because Choctaw Nation, the more people understand about Choctaw history and culture, the better it is for everybody. So that is a balance, but I would say this was definitely created with what the community needs were as a priority, but it was also, you add a layer to that of what will the public enjoy? You know, how will this look to the public? And we've talked quite a bit about, even through our kind of marketing plans and some of the branding. And it's that if we're serving our community right, if we're there serving community and we're important to community, and they're coming in and they're, you know, enjoying the facility, enjoying the cultural center, and actually see value and see the use of it, then any visitor coming in who's not Choctaw is going to see that and feel that and see the authenticity and see the community there. And it's going to be a win-win, because I think that would be what any visitor would hope to see, right? Some of these things kind of naturally, organically, authentically happening at the cultural center. So I would say that's been our approach, and that's a goal. But Katie, anything I left out of that feedback?
I think I would probably just add that, you know, we're an hour north of the Dallas Metroplex, so we're on a very traveled road as well. So we do, you know, in the planning, we did anticipate that there will be a lot of outside visitors. But as Stacy said, the main goal that went into it is how, you know, what is this going to mean to our community and how best can they use it? What are they looking for, and how best can we deliver that?
I think we're kind of hearing, at least on the Nisqually in particular, the desire to separate those two functions. Like they are now talking about having a more of a visitor welcome center somewhere else than the culture center. That the culture center would be really, maybe there'd be a small like gift shop kind of thing, and if you come by you can see stuff, and then occasional welcoming, you know, like quarterly or something, or monthly, I don't know, where they would invite the public, but they kind of seem to want to keep their traditions and ceremonies private primarily, and then just kind of bring in folks. And this is a bit more remote, although it's pretty close to the highway as well, and actually potentially visible from the highway. So, but it's an interesting kind of, the Crow one is more of a museum, because we don't have one and we're trying to create one at the university, but it's also going to have a primary function to, you know, for tribal members themselves to have a place to continue learning about our culture and carrying that forward for our children and grandchildren. And then, you know, visitors can come and see some of the exhibits and that kind of thing.
Yeah, those are great questions to ask, you know, and I think we feel that if the community doesn't see the value in it, you know, we don't just want a tourist stop. Like, this was built with a lot of functions embedded that would serve community, but at the same time be very welcome for visitors to come in. So yeah, those are definitely important things to think about. If we want to, there may be other questions. We want to be sure to share the virtual tour with you all. We're so excited to share this. We had a lot of fun making this for you. And so if that's okay, if we're ready, I'm going to share my screen again and figure out how to play the film. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go. Let me give this a whirl. Okay, just a second.
There we go.
It's showing something.
It's the end of your slideshow, I think.
Oh, it is. Okay, see, I'm not seeing anything now. Okay, hold on. I apologize. I have not mastered all of the screen sharing here. I think I can make this one work. Are you seeing that? Yes?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, here we go.
Halito, I'm Chief Gary Batten. The Choctaw Cultural Center is a labor of love that spans 8 years of hard work and dedication. When we decided to build the center, our mission was to honor our ancestors by telling the story of Choctaw Aya, or the Choctaw journey, from our origins to the present and beyond. Proudly sitting on over 100 acres of land here in Durant, Oklahoma, just across the highway from the Choctaw Nation headquarters, our center is a spiritual place open to all who want to learn about our faith, family, and culture. Welcome to the Choctaw Cultural Center.
Halito, I'm Stacy Halfman, and I'm proud to invite you into the history and culture of the Choctaw people. On our tour today, you'll see some of the highlights of the Cultural Center and learn how we use the center to share the story of the Choctaw people with our visitors. Guests will begin their visit here in the welcome area and will be greeted with a friendly halito by one of the center's associates. Immediately, the guest experience starts as they smell the burning embers of the central fire engraved with the 12 districts of the Choctaw Nation. The textures we used were carefully chosen to transport guests to our world. The flooring is made of rock quarried in Stigler, Oklahoma, which is in the northern part of the Choctaw Nation. We made every effort to source local materials when we could. From the basket we've designed to the stick-ball door handles, you'll notice that every detail, no matter how small, was thoughtfully and intentionally crafted. On the wall behind me, you'll see the guiding principles of the Choctaw Nation: faith, family, and culture. These principles were present in every decision we made for the center.
I got a call from Chief Batten, and he asked me to come in and visit with him. And he said, we're going to build a cultural center. And he said, and I want you to take the lead in building the cultural center. And first thing I answered was tears coming through my eyes. You know, it was a dream come true, a vision that I had. And, you know, that just answered everything that the people was wanting. And afterwards, then I thought, I don't even know how to build a culture center. I think the number one goal that came into mind when we started thinking about the cultural center is, what did the people want? You know, this is going to be their cultural center. This isn't my cultural center, the Chief's cultural center, but it's the people. They are the stakeholders of this cultural center. And so it was like, you have to go out and visit them. You know, you have to listen to them, and you have to learn what it is that they want to see in this cultural center. So our elders played a big part of deciding what goes into the culture center. I think one of the most important aspects into going building a cultural center is setting up a focus group and working with a committee. I had a committee of 5 really intelligent, cultural, traditional people, and listening to them and working with them to decide what it is that we need to start and what we need to do first. So we decided we need to visit with a focus group. We visited and talked to and listened to every program within the Choctaw Nation so that we can see what we can do to help their program bring in the culture. Because our culture was lacking in various departments, and I thought it was important that the departments know who they're serving and be able to answer questions about culture, about Choctaw. And so it was important to set up a focus group. And I'm really thankful for the committee that I selected to sit and listen and work days and nights and brainstorm about building a cultural center. This is where we went and visited all the cultural centers from the East Coast to the West Coast. And we, I think, visited like 36 cultural centers and museums. And what I like about that is how helpful they were. They took us in just like we were one of their tribal members, showed us the ups and downs, the do's and don'ts, and if they had to do it over again, what would they do different? And so we learned from those people, and I'm very thankful that they were there for me and my committee to see things through and to help us build a dream for our Choctaw people. So this is where we're at today, and we call this a Choctaw Noat Aya, and it is a Choctaw journey. And we came over the journey over the Trail of Tears. We survived that. We are on a journey today with the Culture Center, and then we'll be on a journey in the future for our own future generations to come. I can remember my dad always saying, you know, I always try to get things done real quick and try to get myself in a hurry to do it. And he always says, Sue, you know, have patience, you know, because good things will happen.
From the welcome area, guests can visit the Cultural Center's Cafe, Chompali, which will feature traditional Choctaw foods like banaha, tanchi labona, and Indian tacos. On the other side of the welcome area is the gift store, Hushi, where visitors can purchase Choctaw artwork, t-shirts, souvenirs, and foods from Choctaw farms. Just past the gift shop, guests will find our auditorium, which will seat 200 people. This versatile space can be used for presentations, conferences, films, and lectures. To begin the Choctaw journey, we'll enter the orientation gallery. The area houses 12 vignettes, one for each of the Choctaw Nation's districts. Each one of these vignettes represents a different aspect of Choctaw life in the present and gives our communities the opportunity to tell their own stories.
Choctaw Noat Aya is the Choctaw journey. It follows the Choctaw people through about 14,000 years of our history. That's about 600 generations or so. It's set up into 4 different landscapes that each talk about a specific component of that journey. Landscape 1 talks about the origins of the Choctaw people. This goes back about 600 generations in time to talk about 3 different stories that describe how the Choctaw people came into being. 2 of these stories have been told in our community since time immemorial. One of the stories comes from archaeology, but each of those stories is interpreted through a Choctaw voice, be it a storyteller or a modern archaeologist. One of the things that makes the Choctaw Cultural Center so special is the level of community voice and engagement that we have in the permanent exhibits. More than 40 Choctaw artists participated in making the objects that you see as you go through the different landscapes. Part of this was really exciting because there are certain beautiful pieces of traditional artwork that our community did in the past that have been sleeping for more than 200 years. And some of those were brought forward just for this exhibit. Now they're going to live on again. Landscape 2, which is what you see behind me, interprets the Choctaw village of Shomotakali. That's hanging moss in the Choctaw language. Our ancestors lived here at the time from about first European contact until the Trail of Tears. It's an exciting area, and it's particularly tied in with the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. The Choctaw Nation Historic Preservation Department helped to excavate the site a little bit, ran our ground penetrating radar there. And the exhibits are all set up so it's not just what you see on the surface. So these aren't just trees that are behind me, they're all particular species, they all have names in Choctaw, they all have specific meanings in our culture and specific uses. You can get to some of that by an augmented reality display that layers on top of this. There'll be screens where people who come through the interpretive area can look on this landscape and see it as our Choctaw ancestors did, see the different Choctaw names for the plants and the animals. see the different uses for them, see how they were managed, see how they changed through the seasons. There's a landscape following this that is a theater, treaty theater, that interprets through the voice of modern community members the government-to-government relationship that our ancestors maintained with the United States through a series of treaties. Ultimately, these treaties changed our life by setting up the Trail of Tears, but through it all, we maintained our sovereignty. The Trail of Tears landscape has 3 different theaters that each, through our own community members' voices, interpret different aspects of the Trail of Tears. And then there's an exhibit that follows 2 different Choctaw families on different routes of the Trail of Tears. Most people don't realize it, but the Choctaw Trail of Tears lasted for 70 years. And this exhibit follows one family at the beginning and one family at the end and talks about the different but related hardships that they each overcame. Going from that landscape, you enter the final landscape, which is landscape 4. This helps to interpret the Choctaw story here in Oklahoma. Some parts of it, just like our roots, go back to the 1830s. Other parts are completely modern. There's an exhibit in there that talks about the importance of the allotment process in Choctaw landholding. It talks about the schools and how that's a continuing part of education that goes back to the earliest days in Choctaw society. It's still important today. There's an exhibit that talks about stickball, the Choctaw national sport. There's another exhibit that talks about and interprets the modern Choctaw home and all the connections that has back to our earliest history, but still today. In this landscape and others, there are life cast figures that are made just, they're casts of our own community members. They look exactly like our community members, but they're set up to represent different time periods in the Choctaw journey. But to me, one of the things that's the most special is that there's no narrator as you walk through. You're literally meeting our community, whether it's their pictures in the text panels, whether it's their voices in the videos, their faces in the videos. This is our community telling its own story. To me, that makes it extremely special and unique.
So Seth, your live cast, it looks amazing. How does it feel to see this in person finally?
Yeah, thank you. Kind of crazy. Honestly, it's, to see how real it looks and how good of a job that they did is kind of crazy. But it was cool to be part of the process and happy with how it turned out.
Tell us about this pose that's happening. I know it's not in the exhibit yet, but what's happening?
Yeah, well, we had to hold that pose for a very long time, so I'm very familiar with it. But basically what it will be once it's actually up, we'll be holding a bow with his family all around. And so it's almost like he's heard something in the distance. So he's looking off in the distance just to be prepared to protect the family if he needs to.
You definitely look like you are ready to protect.
Ready to go, yeah.
It's wonderful. Well, I think it's so great that the Choctaw Cultural Center has used so many community members. What does that mean to you? Or what has that meant to you to be a part of this process and to know you'll live on in the cultural center?
Yeah, great question. So cool. I think one of the neatest things is that when community members and non-community members come in this building, they will see Choctaws all throughout. And I think from the very beginning, what we said was that if we're true to who we are as Choctaw tribal members, this thing will be successful. And this is just another example of how we've done that among all the many examples throughout the whole facility.
That's fantastic. And are you going to adopt this traditional hairstyle?
No, I am not. But that is one of the cool things, and would point out when people are looking at these, everything from the clothes that we wear to the hairstyles, it's traditionals to the tattoos. That's part of our history, that's part of our tradition, so it's cool to be able to share that.
Our children are sacred, and the Looksee Activity Center was built to honor and encourage their growth and learning development. Inside the Looksee, which is Choctaw for turtle, kids can take part in various cultural activities and demonstrations, or sit and listen to oral storytelling. There is also plenty of room to climb, play, learn, and explore. We have a treehouse equipped with a log slide, 2 Choctaw dwellings, traditional and contemporary styles, and even a space for arts and crafts. Down the hall, we have classrooms with various lessons, lectures, and workshops planned for older kids and adult learners, and also a full kitchen classroom for learning how to prepare traditional Choctaw dishes.
The Choctaw Cultural Center has space available to house Choctaw artifacts and archives. It's a repository that we've never had before. The care of our items have always been done by outside entities or by families that have kept their sacred items. Now, the Choctaw Cultural Center offers a space for those things to come and be cared for and be kept for the next 6 generations. The collections and archive space isn't just a repository. There are also several different rooms and labs available. There's an archaeological wet-dry lab where our archaeologists and historic preservation team will be able to go out and bring back archaeological finds from their digs and clean them and process them so that we can accession them into the collections to preserve for future generations. We also have a blessing room for items that come in that need to have some spiritual interference. This area is a smoke room. We can turn fire suppression off so that items can be smoked and blessed. We have a digitization room that will allow us to take our archival materials and put them online so that people can see what's in our archives. It will also help future students and scholars that want to come and research further to be able to access those items that are probably more fragile and can't be handled. Choctaw tribal members will be able to access some items in the archives and collections. They will have to contact us and make an appointment, and they'll be able to come in and look at some of these items. Maybe they want to study the beadwork on a specific item or see how a basket was woven in the 1930s. These objects will be available for them to look at and research.
The Living Village allows our guests to interact with Choctaw culture throughout history in a more hands-on way. Choctaw educators will be present for demonstrations and to answer questions. Over time, programming will change and grow to include more interpretive elements and new buildings. Because agriculture is such a large part of Choctaw culture, there will be an heirloom garden growing Choctaw crops that can be used in the center's restaurant. It will also function as a community garden in the future.
The mound represents our relationship to the earth and fertility. There's a walking track around the outside of the mound so guests can visit this wonderful earthwork that pays homage to our mound building history. Finally, we have our stickball fields out front that will host practices, games, and tournaments.
I hope you enjoyed your virtual visit to the Choctaw Cultural Center today. We have poured our heart and soul into making sure this place represents the Choctaw people of the great Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and their Choctaw spirit. We hope to see you again, or as we say in Choctaw, Chapisala Chiki.
Okay, well, I hope you all enjoyed our virtual tour, and we're so happy to answer any questions following the tour.
Noah, hello, niece. Good to see you today.
Ben, how are you?
I just got on, thank you. I'm calling, I'm asking a question of something you may have answered earlier. Sorry, I couldn't be here sooner. What staff member or which staff members were hired first in the design and development of the center?
Yeah, that's a great question. There was a cultural team that was in place that consisted of existing staff, and mostly existing staff and some Choctaw tribal members that kind of were there for like the early beginning to put the ideas together, reaching out to community. And then when Tribal Council approved the funding and to move forward on the project, the first staff member they hired was the senior director for the Choctaw Cultural Center. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I'll have to do a little more research to find out what all you have there.
Yeah, happy to share that with you, even offline. We continue to hire staff for the Cultural Center. And then there are existing staff within cultural services. So there was a division that already existed at Choctaw Nation that houses historic preservation department, also cultural events. And then the newest to join that team is the cultural center staff itself. So I've come on board. Katie Shaw, who's on this call today, she's our director of curation. We have a director of education, a public programs manager, marketing manager, facilities manager. So we tried to really round out kind of the leadership of the Choctaw Cultural Center team.
Stacy, could you tell us who the architect was and what process they went through to develop the design, the kind of engagement process, and how they got the cultural elements correct for you?
Yeah, the architects were JCJ Architect. They are in Hartford, Connecticut. And I know there were, even when I came on board to the project, one of the first meetings we flew out to Hartford. A lot of the Choctaw reps flew to Hartford to meet at their offices and really get a good update on and select, do some of the final selections on a lot of the materials, down to like the chair patterns for the restaurant. You know, those meetings where you're really looking at the materials, selecting colors. So that was one of my first meetings with JCJ. And I think they have been, I wasn't there through the whole process, but I've heard really great things about how our architects had a lot of meetings with and really listened to the Choctaw cultural team to try to incorporate as much culture as they could into places like you saw in the video, the lobby. There's so many cultural elements embedded in the actual, like from floor to ceiling. If you look at the floor, the way it's designed, there's a central fire, there's a circle around that, there's the 4 directions embedded. There are even things like where they really heard that story of the Choctaw Irish connection, and they were familiar with the sculpture that went up in Ireland called Kindred Spirits. And so if you go into the restaurant and you look up, the lighting are these features that reflect Kindred Spirits, that sculpture. They just truly, in my experience, really listened to elements of Choctaw culture and to direction from the cultural team and incorporated that into the overall design. So I think that was a really positive environment, positive relationships and communication. And actually a lot of the, you know, the groups that we worked with, the design division out of Massachusetts who helped with the exhibits, Hargraves and Associates who helped with our landscaping, Monadnock Media who is developing all the theater and media pieces for the exhibits, Manhattan Construction out of Oklahoma. I have heard so many examples where these companies have said that this was one of the most meaningful projects they had ever worked on. And I think that's because, you know, they came in, they met Choctaw people, they listened to these stories and did their best then to have that reflected in the work and what they're developing. I think they learned a lot along the way. So that exchange of information with your, you know, all the people that will be working on your project is really crucial. I wasn't there for all of the years, you know, from an inception to final design, but so I'm just sharing kind of my perspective on that. Katie, is there anything you want to share about kind of that process?
I have worked on museums before, tribal museums before, and this project, I do have to say, it is incredibly meaningful. Every touch, you know, from like just the light fixtures to the door pulls to the woven basket ceilings, everything has a meaning, and you really walk in and you're just immersed in this culture. You know you are something special. And that took a lot of years of meeting and listening with community members, talking to our architects, and letting us take those words back to them as well, of what they want to see, and what they wanted, an authentic environment. And so they were able to provide that, which I think is really, really impactful. We do have a question in the comments, Stacy, and I'm not sure if we touched on this or not, but how many years was this in planning and development?
I would say 4 to 6 years, probably planning and development, and then construction began in 2017 and is essentially complete. We're still, because of COVID and some delays with companies that were coming in from out of state to complete like live cast installation, media, things like that. We have a few delays, but for the most part, we've hit substantial completion on construction. So total of 8 years, 2 of that dedicated to construction. And I would say at least a couple of years of that were dedicated to going out to community, visiting other cultural centers. So the planning and design is somewhere also in that, probably 2 to 4 year time frame ahead of construction.
And where did all the funding come from? Was it all tribally funded directly, or did you have any grants or?
Yeah, this was funded through Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. The tribal council approved this project through a resolution and in support of funding this cultural center. We're, staff that's coming on board, and I mentioned earlier we have, we'll be seeking support for certain projects, like through the NEA. We have a grant right now to help us develop, put into place an artist in residence program, and then to begin to really connect the Choctaw Artist Registry and those artists with the Cultural Center. So we will be seeking grant support when we can to help with those. And projects like through the Historic Preservation Department, they receive NAGPR grants, but for the most part, the construction and all the design was funded by Choctaw Nation.
There's a question in the comments. How much space did you have for your collection before you had this building? And what was the process for planning future growth in your collection? Very good questions. Choctaw Nation did not have, let me think how to phrase this. They had collections, but they were all donated to the Choctaw Foundation, which is a 501c3 entity through Choctaw Nation. And those objects were and still are housed at US Art in Dallas. We are in the process of beginning to inventory those items and move them into the Cultural Center. When I came on a year ago, there were just a handful of objects that we knew exactly what they were and where they were going, and those were all exhibit items that had been made specifically for the exhibit. So for historical items, those are housed at US Art, and they'll be moved to the Cultural Center later this year. For future growth, there have been talks about adding on. Obviously, when you build the building, it's already too small, right? You've already outgrown it because you have so much going in and so many things you want to do there. So there are plans to expand that in the future, but at this time, we're going to use the beautiful space that we have. And then Stacy, there's a question about admission. Will we charge admission?
Yes, we will charge admission, except Choctaw tribal citizens will not be charged admission. And so we're working on developing a membership program where Choctaw citizens would be able to have free admission, essentially through a free membership to the Cultural Center. And so, but non-Choctaw visitors would be charged admission, yes.
There's a question about the software for our digital collection. We do have an online collection currently through the Choctaw and Pona database, and I can post that link here in just a second in the comments. And that was done through a grant. Historic Preservation filed for a grant with the IMLS and was able to purchase a program called Rediscovery Proficio. And one of the great things about that program is that we are able to catalog items in their Choctaw names, as well as in English. So it has an interface where we can post directly to the Choctaw and Pona database. And I see that growing a lot more in the coming year as we bring our objects up.
I have a question. In the video, there was mention of some questions that I gathered it was maybe a group of elders or a working group answered in their pre-development tours of the other cultural centers. Do you know what those questions were? It sounded fairly extensive in terms of their information gathering about what worked and what didn't work.
Oh, that's a great question. I have not seen a list of questions. You mean like when they went and would visit different cultural centers and kind of what they were looking for? I haven't seen a list of those questions. So I could certainly ask if that's something you want us to follow up with and share with you. I'll ask Sue. You saw Sue in the video. She's my supervisor. So I'll ask Sue if they had one, or maybe ask her what, you know, what those meetings look like, how they set them up, and some of the things they asked about. Yeah, that's a great question, but I don't.
Yeah, that would be, it would be great if you wouldn't mind following up with that, because that's sort of the stage we're at. And so if we do get the opportunity to actually visit places, it would be great to make sure we don't miss having the right question asked. And also to know if there was kind of a process they developed in setting it up so that they were meeting the right people to get the most in-depth answers for each facility. Yeah, thank you very much, Stacy.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions today?
I have a question as a follow-up to the funding. Did the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, I guess through the foundation, commit to basic yearly funding the center?
Yes, Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma will continue to support our operational funding through the annual general fund. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think there's one more question in the chat. What was the budget for the Cultural Center, including development and construction?
The total budget was $75 million. Yes.
Can you break out the construction cost for us offhand?
I think that actually I can't. I'm so sorry. I don't want to say the wrong amounts. I know that we talk about the project and the construction is $75 million. So there may be some of the earlier design, you know, phases of the project that aren't included in that, like some of the early research, those trips. I don't know if I've seen a total that was spent on some of that groundwork being laid, but the total construction budget was $75 million.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood. I thought that included some operational costs.
And how many square feet is that?
It's just over 100,000 square feet. That's the facility. but there were costs included in the development of the site. For example, the earthwork, the stickball fields, that living village that you saw, you know, everything that went in, that goes into the full site, as well as the facility, which is 100,000 square feet.
Yeah, that's the whole site, because that would be $750 a square foot otherwise. I imagine there's a lot of infrastructure costs and site work and all of that.
Yes. Yes.
And was it a green site, like nothing out there when you started? You had to do all the infrastructure?
Yeah, for the most part, it had been put to pasture. They're doing some agriculture on there, but Choctaw Nation owns almost the whole parcel of land. There are a couple of homeowners kind of near the project, but it was for the most part pasture or untouched. It's part of a prairie land in the region.
And did you follow any sustainable guidelines or principles? Was there goals for that in terms of like LEED or anything on that line?
I am sure there were, and I'm sorry, but I cannot. I'm trying to rack my brain around your question and to see if I can remember. I'm sure there were goals around that, but I cannot answer that right now. I'm so sorry. I'm happy to follow up. I can certainly ask our construction team as well, but that is not, I'm just not able to recall on that piece right this second.
Yeah, it's just one of the goals we often seek with our clients and tribal communities is to,
absolutely,
along as part of the culture, is to make it as, you know, gentle on Mother Earth as possible, and
yes,
use renewable resources when possible, and all that kind of thing.
Yes.
And also reduces long-term operating costs.
Yeah, I'm happy to follow up on that and do a little digging into what those goals were and if we hit those.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And is it okay if we email you, Stacy? Do you have an email that we can contact you at?
Sure. Katie, do you mind typing that into the chat? All of us at the Cultural Center and at Choctaw Nation, it's our first name and our last initial, first initial, last name. So shalfmoon@choctawnation.com.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And Stacy, any resources that you have to send our way, I'm happy to post those on our website so that the whole cohort can access them. So
okay,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, it was a beautiful presentation. I am so excited and can't wait to see the facility in person eventually.
Thank you. We really appreciate everyone, you know, listening in and hearing the story of the Choctaw Nation Cultural Center. Our whole team is just thrilled to be a part of this project and, you know, supporting Choctaw Nation in this effort. We can't wait to see you all there. One of these days when people can gather more easily. What a year, right? To try to open this, but we've done really well. So thank you for inviting us. Thank you for selecting us. We're so happy to share and help others. Thank you all.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great week, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye, Gwen.
Bye.